Timing charts, which if you don't know are these graph-looking things you'll sometimes see next to animations, can be pretty confusing for anyone getting into 2D animation. There are some good resources out there about how to use them, but not as many explaining what their usefulness is and who should actually be using them. You might be unsure if you're supposed to or would benefit from creating timing charts for your own animations. This is what I'll mostly focus on here, but I'll explain briefly first what they're for and how they work. Most of the time, the first stage of creating an animation is drawing the keyframes, frames that show the distinct stages of the motion. Now this would need to be smoothed out with in-between frames. A timing chart plans how many in-betweens should be added and how these drawings should be spaced. A new chart will be created for every gap between two keyframes, in this case between keyframes A and B. They are read top to bottom or left to right, with A at the start and B at the end. Both are circled to make it clear that they are keyframes. Every frame that goes between them is indicated with a tick mark. You can add these marks according to how you want the drawings to be spaced, but in order to make the intended spacing as clear as possible, you need these arching lines. One arch for each gap shows that these frames will all be spaced evenly. This chart, on the other hand, has one gap with two arches instead of one. Fewer arches means closer spacing, so in this case, frame 2 is closer to frame 3. If the path your motion follows between two of your keyframes curves in some way, rather than going in a direct straight line, then you need at least one frame to indicate that, called a breakdown. Breakdown frames are often shown in a timing chart with an underline. If you want a more in-depth explanation for how timing charts work, I'll have a video linked in the description that I think does a great job of that. But now, I'd like to move on to why they're used. In a professional 2D animation production, there will sometimes be people whose job it is to take choppy keyframe animations and add in-between frames to them. The keyframe animator that made the initial frames needs to communicate to this person where each new frame should go, and so they'll make timing charts. Another time they could be important is for planning ahead when animating traditionally on paper. If you don't have the option to replay your animation back perfectly whenever you want to check how it's looking, putting some extra thought into what frames need to be added can prevent mistakes and lost time. Odds are that you animate digitally rather than on paper, and aren't a part of a professional production, so it might seem like this shouldn't matter to you. It's true that they aren't essential for independent, non-professional animating, and you can usually get by fine by planning this stuff out mentally, but I think there's still benefits that make this worth learning for any 2D animator. Maybe the biggest one is that it will help you understand spacing in animation better. Here are some common structures for timing charts that result in different effects. I really recommend copying these charts and their corresponding circle animations as a practice exercise. After that, make a circle animation that strings several of these charts together. Start with 3 or more frames to be the keyframes, and then decide how you want it to move between each one, and which type of chart would accomplish that. This will give you a better understanding of how to control the speed of your animations with and without using charts in the future, and being familiar with them will make you more conscious and intentional about how you choose to space your drawings in order to get a more natural looking motion. Another reason to get the hang of using them is in case you do ever find the opportunity to work on a larger project with other people. It also, probably because it's mostly used by professionals, makes your work look cooler and more professional, or at least I think so. The one thing that you should be careful about when you start using timing charts is neglecting to include details like overshooting and overlapping action, like in this animation where the hair continues to move after the head reaches its stopping point and goes past its own stopping point before settling back into it. There are ways to show these more complex details with charts, but if you're new to using them, I recommend using charts for only more rigid movement, like this head here, and then animating looser, dragging parts with a more instinctive, maybe going frame by frame method. If you'd like to check out more animation tutorials, here's one that you could try next. Thank you to all you Patreon members, such as the ones listed on screen, and thanks for watching.